Hello, everyone. It is Thursday. Man, this week went fast. It's a holiday week. We have a special guest with us today, someone that I haven't actually interacted with before, but apparently is a pretty interesting character, so I hear. Adam from IRONSCALES. How you doing today, Adam?
Hey, George, how are you?
You know, the week blew by, honestly. That holiday
That shortened week, yeah, it'll get you every time.
no, that holiday was good though. It was like a recharge after being on the road, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, since I don't know you very well, there's chances that there's people out there in the community that don't know you well.
Come
So,
on.
how about you give us a little bit of an introduction, who you are, how did you get to your current role? Give us a little trip down memory lane professionally, right? And
Sure.
kind of put it all together for us.
Sure, you bet. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody. Adam Hofeler. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I've been with IRONSCALES for 3 years now. I'm Senior Vice President of Worldwide Sales there. Previous employment, I was with NetApp for almost 11 and a half years, data storage and software. After that, I went to Palo Alto Networks for 4 years and found my way to IRONSCALES based on someone who I knew that worked together at NetApp. Got on the board of IRONSCALES and tapped me on the shoulder to see if I wanted to come over and kind of build out the people process as it pertains to IRONSCALES from a sales perspective.
Gotcha. So, I mean, you're talking two completely different animals, right?
Yeah, definitely.
NetApp
Absolutely.
versus IRONSCALES. Like, where were you at before NetApp, right? Like, you left school and you decided to get into technology industry?
No, that's good. Yeah, I did my undergrad and MBA at the University of Tennessee, so I'm a big Tennessee football guy. I started my sales career at Xerox, and I spent 5 years at Xerox for a long time, and then went to EMC, again in the data storage world, and then from EMC went to NetApp. So that's kind of how the evolution of all of it came, kind of being asked to go to one place to another. I was in storage for a really long time. And then when a colleague of mine was at NetApp, went over to Palo, he kind of called me and said, "Hey, what do you think about going to the security sector?" I was like, "Well, I don't really know security all that well, but I think it's a fast growing market and I'd love to learn more." So it definitely came to fruition, and it worked out well.
Got it. So, Xerox into, enterprise storage into security, right? Like,
Yeah,
you've kind of touched different parts of the IT industry at different times, right?
absolutely.
So, like, let's zoom back for a second though, because that's actually really important stuff. So let's touch on Xerox.
Yeah.
Give me your opinion on the convergence of print, IT services, and consulting. Like, obviously they're all crashing, right?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
that didn't happen overnight, by the way.
It didn't.
So
Yeah.
I would love to understand your view of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was there, everyone, like, the internet was so new and virtual, and everything was, the idea and conversation of we're going to be a paperless environment sounded great, but there was plenty of industries that just couldn't do it for, government regulations and keeping documents for 7 to 10 years. It sounded great in the new world that we were in, 20 years ago, but even still today, people still have to print things out when you sign things from, whether that's mortgage or financial services. There's a printed copy and it's kept over a period of time, so it still becomes more and more challenging. So when I was there at Xerox, it was still, very, very much we were paper centric. Things were starting to go digital, but people would end up going digital in some degree, where they'd have a paper one and then scan it in. So you'd need a provider or something that can scan it in, and then resources to do it is always a problem.
That's still happening, by the way.
Yeah. I would say it's changed and evolved, but it really hasn't, right? But the ideas and thoughts are, if we can become paperless or digital in some form or fashion, but those digital copies need to be somewhere. And then when someone needs them, or you want to show, George and I are in a conversation, you're like, "Hey, I'd like to see what that looks like." I'd have to send you something, you'd print it out, you'd mark it up. So it kind of moved and shifted maybe from the business world to maybe the home office world, where people started to print off more and things of that nature. So it was really a big transformation over there.
Yeah, no, 100%. But so let's, like, one topic that's worth touching on as a drive-by. So, like, all of these copier companies seem to be on this crazy acquisition spree, right? They said, "Hey, we really need to get into the IT services business. Let's just buy our way through." and
Yeah.
you just see these acquisition. Okay. Just not even in US, Canada, Europe, whatever.
All over the world. Yep.
Do you buy this theory? Because like, just because you buy somebody doesn't mean that you automatically know how to operate that, right? So
Yeah.
like, I feel like in some cases, if they get it right, it could work. I'm just struggling to see it scale.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the challenge is the scalability. Like, what are they going to do differently to make that growth? The growth in that market is not very big, right? It's single digits. What was, a very, very big business growing at, call it, 20, 30%, now is growing at, single digits, depending on the company and organization. There's been very little innovation in that space. And it now becomes more, you kind of hit on it earlier, operationally. How can I be more efficient? Do I need my people to do it, or can I outsource it? And from a services perspective, take more on from a people process perspective.
So if you were talking to an MSP today and this
Yep.
topic came up, oh, by the way, innovation, which is take an HP server and shove it into the bottom of the copier machine.
Yeah, exactly. That's the
If
innovation that's happening today.
Yeah. If you were to talk to an MSP about this topic today and they said, should I be worried that my copier partner vendor is like a Trojan horse in my customer? Is that a real fear, or is that not realistic?
I don't think that's realistic. I think the copier business is commodity based. And I think what they're selling is services in some form or fashion, right? It's not the hardware aspect of things. It's the people or what services you'll provide.
Got it. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so let's fast forward to the next stage, right?
Yeah, you got
Enterprise storage, right?
Yes,
and
sir.
like, it's interesting because like cloud started in that kind of mid 2000s as a marketing concept, right? Hosted and cloud, and then like the competitor to that theory was, dude, you need to control your costs. Enterprise storage, do it yourself. Know what your situation is, right? Fast forward 10 years now, right? You're 2015 to 2020, right? This last 5 years. It's, Dell bought VMware. Now they're splitting up again. Now it's like, hey, you can save costs by moving out of the cloud, right? Like, is there a demarcation point to like too much in the cloud becomes too expensive? It's time to move back. Like, so from that, all of that being said, right?
Yep.
What's your opinion on what fits in the cloud and what fits in, in metal that you control?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And each organization is a little bit different, right? Absolutely. When I joined, I'll take NetApp, they were roughly about $180 million company. When I left, we were, $5.5 billion. So obviously there was a massive uptick in the early 2000s to 2010, 2015 that, growth and data and the evolution of more information was always being processed and things and more devices out there, right? When you look at phones, I mean, the iPhone is, I think, 15 years old. So now, do you know anyone that doesn't have a smartphone and things of that nature? So more and more data is being consumed, right? And I think we all agree with that. And we see that on a daily basis, that's for sure. That being said, that's where you have like the AWS and Google clouds, Microsoft clouds have really accelerated, and why they've become better at it, right? AWS is the most mature. They've been doing it for 15 years. Microsoft obviously jumped in, Google jumped in, and there's some other providers that jump in on the cloud and services what they protect. And the challenge would always be, before companies and organizations would go that route, is security, right? How is my data being secure? Who has access to it? How do I have access to it? And all those other things that go into it, aside from just the data. So Before people were going to the cloud, that's what you heard is the constraint. The constraint was, I'm not so sure if I feel comfortable enough with my data being somewhere else that's not in my data center.
Yeah. And it was funny because on this very topic, I saw a whole thread today on social about these lawyers saying that they had to have control of their data in order to meet compliances. And then like somebody actually in that entire thread said, it's because they want to have the subpoena come to them and they don't want to have their data go out the back door without knowing it. And I was like, I mean, being in that business, I guess I could see why that would make sense. But yeah, I guess every industry is slightly different.
There would be some government regulations from a financial perspective, and our key databases we don't have. And the funny thing is people look at it in some form or fashion from a security perspective, but then I'll ask them, hey, look, do you use Microsoft Office 365? And they're like, yeah, we sure do. I was like, well, you don't host that. That's somewhere else, right? So all of a sudden those security pieces like, oh, okay, now I get it. And those companies do a tremendous job, by the way, of securing your data. You should feel very, very comfortable with. There's thousands and thousands of companies and organizations that do it today, but there's been a paradigm shift between consuming it all in-house and managing it, and then having someone else manage it as well from a cloud
So is
perspective.
there a, like it's a spectrum, right? Is there
It
a
is.
threshold where you're like, absolutely go cloud versus maybe you should start to think about bringing it back into your own private deployment?
That's a very good question. And it really depends on the industry and the constraints that you have there. Do I think that almost all applications can be in the cloud? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that there's a group of CISOs and security folks and legal that would say, hey, look, based on these requirements, we prefer it to be here. But at the end of the day, there's been some great innovations and things that are done in the cloud to make sure it's secure, make sure it's accessible. There's also a cost associated with it. There's a capital cost compared to an operational cost when you go to the cloud that you don't consume it. There's also, when you look at, whether you're financing or leasing from an operation perspective.
I feel like Dell's pitch when they did the whole VMware merger was, hey, I'll show you your 5-year costs and you'll be blown away by how much less you'll spend, right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have people, maybe as many people managing it, right? If you are in a business that is very seasonal, maybe that even makes more sense, right? Because your busy time, you can scale up and, oh, by the way, scale down. And save you money over a period of time rather than just, I need to buy it because my busy season is 2 months. Well,
right.
That's great. But some things like the cloud and the cloud organizations that are there, well represented, can help in that manner quite a bit from a cost perspective, operation perspective. For me, if I were to look at any in the applications that I would want on my own, would be the financial stuff, will be, I don't want to say secretive things, but those pieces of data that are most important to me in my business, if those still you feel most comfortable with that you have in-house and you're managing it, that would be it. But when you look at almost all these other applications, it being cloud and cloud centric, I think you should feel safe and secure and look at the financial pieces of it. I think it's more of an ROI more so than can it work or will it work?
No, fair enough. I mean, listen, there's 1,000 ways to get to where you're trying to go.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ebb and flow for sure. So, all right. Well, that fast forwards us to like modern times, right? You're with IRONSCALES.
Yeah, absolutely.
IRONSCALES obviously helps people protect, themselves when it comes to phishing and security awareness, and like just trying to get past the weakest link, which is the person behind, between the chair and the keyboard, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, you're working with MSPs a lot. Sounds like you're also working upstream with maybe in-house IT for enterprises.
Correct. Yep.
I don't know if the challenge is the same. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I would love to understand from your perspective with the people that, are in the MSP space specifically, why is it that, is the layered approach still the reality? Are there holes that are obvious that still aren't plugged? Like, I feel like we always talk about the floor, right? Hey, here's the bare minimum everyone should be doing. Let's just try and raise that just a little bit. But what about this space on top of that, right? Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, and it's evolving, right? That's the thing that I've learned, in 10 years in security is having a layered approach from a security perspective is best, right? There's not one product or one company or organization that can tell you, hey, we do it all and one size fits all. That's not the case. For instance, I said I worked at Palo Alto Networks, and I still believe that Palo has some great firewalls, maybe the best, if not the best. But they're not going to tell you, hey, look, don't protect anything on your endpoint or your computer just because you have a great firewall. Mm-hmm. And we're no different, at IRONSCALES, and this is not an IRONSCALES pitch at all. But when we look at it as, hey, look, we know that most cyber attacks that have success start from email or inside the mailbox. Mm-hmm. Right? So you definitely need a layer approach when you look at it, whether that's through Microsoft and their product and offerings, and as well as Google and their product and services that they offer. And having something or another layer at the mailbox level is only going to help you from a protection perspective. It really comes into like an insurance policy of what is my risk and reward? Do you need it? Maybe, maybe not. But if you want to protect the data, if you had issues with whether that's fake login pages or impersonation attempts, whatever that case might be that not only the MSPs are facing, but their customers are facing, you really have to look at that challenge overall. And what we see, particularly in the MSP space, is their customers are getting hit with these attacks. You know, and the increase, especially with the pandemic and everyone working from home, the uptick in the number of emails that are being sent because I can't walk right next to George in your cube and ask you a question. Now I send you an email.
I get that, but let me
Yeah.
tell me if I'm missing something, right? Here are the attack approaches that I feel are obvious, and if there's other ones, to show it out there.
Okay, let's go.
One is the old school. I'm trying to send you an attachment with something bad in it. Okay.
Yeah. And that's decreasing, right? Those days, not to say it's not still relevant.
The zip file, the whatever. Yeah.
Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, here, click here. I've got your invoice.
So that's number one. Number two is I send you an email that makes it look like it's somebody else in your organization, but it's actually not them.
You got it.
Like, hey, I'm the CEO. Go and do this, Mr. Employee that works for me. But it's not really the CEO. It's somebody acting to be the CEO, right?
You got it.
The third one I feel is, you know, they're trying to spoof somebody else's email to make it look like it's coming from Dropbox or LogMeIn or Office 365 or whatever it is, but it's actually a spoofed email with something bad from a link standpoint, right?
Yeah.
And then the last one is I somehow infiltrate the mailbox. At least this is the last one from George's view. You'll fill other gaps maybe. You know, I infiltrate your email box. I literally take content from within your mailbox, send it back to you to make it look like I'm somebody you're already talking to, hijack the thread, and then get you to somehow send them money somewhere, right?
Account takeovers,
Yeah, so those are the four that are like every day, this is what I see. What is there anything else? Is there,
dude, you should, what are you doing right now? Maybe, do I need to hire you? What's going on? No, that is probably 95% of everything that we see, 100%. And the parts that are having the most success are those impersonation attempts, because usually whatever technical control that you have in place for the most part today, those are going to get inside those mailboxes, right? If you have an Excel spreadsheet or an attachment or a link that's bad, you know, those aren't having as much success, right? Why? Because we know them. They're known attacks. We've seen it before, regardless of what company or organization. They have that list somewhere and they're keeping it. And so when someone sends you something that's bad, and that word bad is, you know, it could be something malicious or not right or something that doesn't make sense, it's being easily removed.
I remembered one more, fifth one.
Okay.
Fifth one is that you click on something and it looks perfect, right? You go to sign in and all they're doing is capturing your credentials.
Yeah, credential theft and harvesting. Yeah. And that kind of goes into the fake login pages, things of that nature. You know, we see a lot of that, the fake login pages, because they're just credential harvesting. Absolutely. They're sitting there patient, and most of the bad actors out there, very patient, right? It's not like you click on something, to your point, and then, oh my gosh, I can't believe I clicked on that. They're patient. They'll wait. They get your credentials, and then they find their way within the organization. That's kind of the account takeover, things of that nature.
So I heard last week on one of these calls, that 94% of all attacks from this angle are via email.
Yes,
not somebody hacked through the firewall, not somebody plugged in a USB stick from home. You're talking about email.
Not anymore. All email. Yeah, the most successful attacks, 90% or higher, are related to email. The FBI in 2017, I believe, said $26 billion was lost based on email attacks. That's 26 billion.
It blew my mind, that statistic. Blew my mind.
So it's out of control, and there's no signs of stopping. Why? Because they're having success. I mean, 26 billion is a big number, right? There is success there, and it comes into that human element that we talked about, right? You can give them as much training and awareness as you want. You can set up all your technical controls as best as you wish, but there's going to be a new way to get in, one way or another. Maybe, they're very, very patient. So yes, they can do research on whether that's your social media account to know that you're out of the office, and then send somebody into your office. As you know, I'm out of the office, and they're all it's just word centric, right? It's all context or contextual in there. and there's not a bad link, there's not a bad attachment that would give you red flags, but it's like, oh yeah, I know George is out of the office, he's on vacation with his family. Of course I'm going to reply.
So if 90+%, we've agreed that number is real, of security, breaches, issues, problems are coming from email right now.
Yep.
Should 90% of our security spend go towards protecting email? Like, I don't feel like that's happening though.
And I would agree with you. And I think that's where the layered approach comes into effect, right? It's been neglected for a long time. It's been neglected. And again, maybe it's that paradigm shift from folks going from Microsoft Exchange that have been on-prem to Office 365, right? For the MSP space, the Office 365 environment has given us so much freedom and things to do and how we manage our people, and more are headed that way. But it's bring on these on-senses, like you've said, of, hey, look, now how do I protect my people? What does that look like? And all facets of it. So to your point, I would agree that 90% of the spend isn't done on email and email security. Now, Microsoft and Google in their cloud offerings do have some, technical security controls built in.
Okay.
And our message within IRONSCALES and other companies like us, they're saying that's just not enough, right? They're just, I don't say they're even scratching the surface.
But hold on a second. Like on the Microsoft side, they've started breaking out some of this stuff as add-on paid for stuff, right? Like advanced threat protection, that's now a paid for thing. That's not just included. Or, you want additional filtering of any kind. Like there's some filtering there, but it's just okay. If you want anything more than that. And then it's very interesting on the other side of things. If you read through the Microsoft Service Agreement, which by the way, they've just updated again, you go through and they're like, all right, well, we recommend a third-party backup. We recommend a spam filtering solution. Like all of a sudden there's all these recommendations in the fine print and you're like, well, that's not part of the $4 per month mailbox here. So what's going on?
Yeah. If you want to get all of Microsoft offerings, I don't know how much it costs, $15, $20 per mailbox per month. It becomes expensive and costly. And then is it best of breed, right? You asked that question of best of breed. What does that look like and how it is? And again, the layered approach is great. And yes, Microsoft is trying to, help their product and advance it, but is it enough? And obviously our stance is no. And and I don't think it'll ever be enough, right? But you need some layer of protection there. And then you need some additional layer of protection all the way around.
So the guy that comes in and says, I'm just going to go all in Microsoft Kool-Aid and I'll be good, right? Like I'm talking not just E1 or not just,
E5
standard. Yeah. Like all the way up.
All the way through. Yeah.
All the way to the top, $50 per user. I'm all in. I'm good. You're still not good.
You're still not good. Yeah, you're still not good. And again, I don't want to sit here and bash Microsoft or Google, but the real challenge is what security measurements do they have in place, and is it enough? And our response, and again, we've got over 3,000 customers today, and we've got other companies and competitors that are similar. It's not enough. Things are getting through. So even the company that is saying, I'm all in Microsoft, let me get the $50 per user per mailbox. I've got all their offerings. I should be fine. Unfortunately, the bad news for anyone who's listening is you're not fine. And it only takes one of those emails to get through. Now, I will say, there's no company, IRONSCALES included, that says we're 100% bulletproof.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. The question becomes is, when something does happen, do you have technology that can help you mitigate it fast? Right?
Fair. So, but isn't part of the struggle that they can't see things as they're happening easily? Isn't that the big problem? Like you can turn all the switches on, but you don't, like you're almost retroing every time, trying to figure out what happened rather than seeing it as it's happening.
The stuff that you know about, the signature-based matching, the bad link, the bad attachment, they do a pretty good job of it. And most companies and organizations do, by the way. So not just Microsoft, but secure email gateways and other technical controls, IRONSCALES and others included. But when you look at a technology that can do things in real time, as you've stated, to say, hey, look, if there's a bad email that's trending around the globe, how can I know about it? What does that look like if it lands inside my mailbox? Because George, who, even though I've given him training, might think it's a real email. So how do I notify them? What technical controls can I put in place either for George as the end user or the security team to say, hey, look, you've received this email. You can either automatically remove it and get it out of everyone's mailbox. And if you need to, put it back in when and if you want. But that's kind of where we are, and that's kind of what we're doing. And most companies are trying to get there as well. Real-time data for real things that are happening that are trending globally. And it's not an easy thing. It's not trivial. And I've been fortunate enough to work for a company that has that and does it today from an IRONSCALES perspective. But that's what we're trying to do is 0-day attacks, and the first one to ever receive it, there's going to be a patient zero. But at the end of the day, how can we minimize that piece, and how do we move it around in the sense of getting it out of my box?
Is it too soon to talk about patient zero? Oh, I'm just kidding. But what about this attack, vector, if you would? Like everyone had, for years, right? You go to your UTM, you talked about your Palo Alto days, you go into and you're like, oh, I don't want any traffic outside of the United States, right? But then these guys are spinning up the VMs in Amazon, and like they can just as easily sign up an account just like you can, right?
Every day is going to be different, right? And something from like a Gmail account will pass your DKIM, DMARC, SPF checks. Why? Because it's a Gmail address. It's known, it's fine, it's been vetted. And so that's where having layers of an approach is going to be very, very important. And again, I don't want to take away from the fact from the MSPs that might be struggling with this, or their customers might be struggling with this, is how do we make their lives better and easier? And it might not just be on the technology front, it could be on the operational side, right? If you're managing hundreds of customers, how do you have a technology that says, okay, I want to block this from all my customers, right? If one gets it, all of them could get it. So, how do I manage that appropriately? I can't staff thousands and thousands of people. That won't make you very profitable at the end of the day from an MSP. So you've got to look at that. What do the operations efficiencies look like? How do we help more than one customer in real-time data is super important.
Okay, so what level of visibility do I have? Is there like, there's obviously the concept of the SOC or the SIEM or some sort of software that's log collecting from all of my various components. But again, to some degree, it's like information overload, right? Like I'm getting alerts all over the place. I go into my ticketing system and I just want to start poking my eye out. Like, how do I get to actionable information?
Yeah. So first off, I would tell you that automation is key here, right? As you've kind of moved forward through, even the elevation of when we're talking about copiers all the way here, automation is key. And so having a technology that can automate most of that process, so you're really only focusing your time, energy, and effort in your teams on the pieces that matter, right? So I would say is as much automation as you can put on, the technology is there to help you. And so therefore, when you look at it and saying, hey, look, now that I'm getting alerts and the system is relatively automatically removing things, what are the things or mechanisms in place that the ones that couldn't be automated, how do I help that? What does that look like for us? And just, again, pointing at it from an email perspective, it's one click and gets it removed out of everyone's mailbox. Very quick, very easy, something to do with. But the big challenge that we have in the MSP world is how do we minimize that? One here, one here, one here. All of a sudden, you're spending quite a significant amount of time. So we have the ability to automate that as much as possible.
Fair. So, but there's two sides to this next coin, and it's an important one. Yeah. One, there's, hey, what education does the end user need in order to help themselves? But then there's what education do the people inside of the service provider, inside of the MSP, like, are they needing additional, security related training? Like, do they need to understand how to turn the key in the ignition because now we have a new, set of tools that we weren't, used to? Like, what does that look like on both sides? Yeah,
great question. So we still believe, we started as a training and awareness company. I would say if you don't have training and awareness for your end users, you should. It's a very crowded space. There's probably 100+ companies and organizations that do training and awareness. That's the first piece. But as we know, you always have new employees. You have happy clickers. You have employees that don't really care what they get. They're going to read or click something no matter what goes in there. So training and awareness only helps so much, right? So having a system and a technology that helps them when something isn't right and lands inside the mailbox is key. And that can be actionable. Hey, look, this doesn't look, hey, George, you just received an email. You get a notification that says, hey, look, this doesn't look right. Please report it and send it to the security team for further analysis. Mm-hmm. Something like that, something that not only a training and awareness can help, but a preventative piece to say, hey,
but not just right click and add to junk, right?
You got it. So that's the first thing that we would say just in any marketplace to say, hey, look, preventative maintenance is your training and awareness, but you need some technology to say it's just not enough to say, well, I trained my folks. The next piece is that you hit on is, now the MSPs have some kind of technology in place. Do I have to become a security expert?
Yes, like
Right?
there's all these security.
Yeah. Now, do I have to hire a bunch of people that know security? And the answer is obviously no. Again, our technology and some others, can give and provide to say, hey, look, we think this is a phishing attack based on everything that we know and understand of this space. The technology is telling you we are 90% confident this is a phishing email. It should be removed. Having some of those additional guidance, because we're looking at, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, context, contextually, what does it look like? That verbiage of, NLP from a language perspective, that verbiage of, hey, George, as you know, I'm out of the office. Can you please buy me 10 Amazon gift cards or 10 Google gift cards, right? Although not malicious when it lands inside the mailbox, we know that there's malicious intent. Again, our system is smart enough, and the technology these days is smart enough to know to say, that's not really George, even though you think it is. And so these are things that we kind of bring to the table when you look at, some of your folks not being security aware or centric, but there's small little things that you can do from a technology perspective to help them.
But how does all of this help that one scenario where, guy's password is password, somebody gets into their mailbox and is sending their email back to them? Like, does anybody solve for that?
I really don't know. Like, the account takeover is a big piece, right? When you look at the account takeover, and sometimes you don't even know that your account's been takeovered yet. I mean, there is technology that does look at it to say forwarding rules that might have been set inappropriately, that didn't come from the command or command center. There are definitely technologies that do that today. Yes, again, part of that layered approach that can really help you with that. You also have things that, considering outbound email, right? That's one of a big problem from a DLP, data loss prevention. If let's say I'm in the healthcare market and industry, and before I send something to someone I'm not supposed to, how can someone help me, or how can a technology help me without sending it there? Or, maybe malicious intent. I'm a disgruntled employee. Today's my last day. Let me send this to my personal email. Now that I have all these social security numbers, I've got all this medical information, I've got all this financial information. Where can I sell that on the black web? Again, these are big issues and challenges that not only IRONSCALES, but other technologies can help solve.
Okay, so $50 mailbox or $4 mailbox, you would tell an MSP, here are the things that you absolutely should have in place today. What is it?
Yeah, the very first thing is inbound protection. Absolutely, right? That is the most important, because of those fake login, fake Office 365 login pages. They are just credential harvesting. We've seen, especially with this pandemic, a massive uptick in impersonation attempts, domain lookalikes, spoofing. Those business, you can classify them as business email compromise. BEC is something that you might be familiar with. Those have gotten a massive uptick as well. Again, it goes back to people are having success with that. So why wouldn't I continue to do it? Because I only need one, right? In any organization, I only need one. So we're seeing a massive piece. So I would say, a technology that helps encompasses all that first and foremost. The malware URL detection, that's where you have the, let me send an attachment or a bad link that's already in there. Obviously very important. Microsoft does a very good job in that, even in their EOP or ATP. They do a decent job of that. The signature-based attacks, basically attacks that we already know. So is that a must-have? Really depends on the customer, what their thought process are, but we're getting very good at that, and we're seeing less of those emails come across more so than anything else.
Okay, so inbound protection, link-based protections. Is there anything else that we're missing when it comes to things that come through email, things that get, surround that whole, ecosystem?
Yeah, I would also say to make sure that you have something that's automated, right? The technology works only as good as the automation aspect of things. If you're going to have to manually go into a dashboard and continue to look at that, the idea and thought of having technology that helps you to do more and helps your business sell more of your business is key, right? You don't want to hire a bunch of people because that kind of lowers the cost and the value that the MSPs have. So having an automated system in place is super critical, because at the end of the day, we want to take cycles off of the MSP, not add cost and not add additional headcount and resources at the end of the day, when you're looking at, how do I protect it, right? If I'm protecting these organizations, now I have to hire 2 people. Now I have someone looking at a dashboard all the time. That's not the intent. And that's not definitely some road that you don't want to go down to.
So how much of this ties into the back end of, the mail provider versus within the mail client versus within the browser, right? Like there's different technologies that angle things differently. How
Yeah,
does it all come together?
for IRONSCALES particularly, we're API based. So in an Office 365 environment, we connect directly into Office 365. It literally is 2 clicks and then the protection begins. But in a layered approach, so that's one way. And we look at ourselves as the last line of defense, right? So you have ATP and Microsoft doing their thing. You could have like a secure email gateway. That's your Mimecast, Proofpoints, Barracuda, Sophos of the world at the outer perimeter layers. So it goes through them first, but that takes MX record changes, additional management, things of that nature. So for us, when we look at it, how we connect is API based. Again, very, very simple, all cloud based. No hardware needed or necessary. 2 clicks and away you go, ready to kind of set up the system.
Okay. And so it doesn't matter. So because we're talking about back end tie-in, it doesn't matter whether you're on a browser or an Outlook.
All aspects. Mobile, you're looking at your mail from a mobile perspective. It all works and is synced appropriately. Yeah, no, nothing that you have to load on your PCs or on your phone. We kind of do that all being tied into the Microsoft umbrella or the Google umbrella.
Fair enough. And so, all right, all things considered, zoom out.
Yep.
What do you tell the guy who put it all in?
Yeah.
Right. Like, I know the answer is nothing's perfect. What do you tell the guy that turned it all on? They got all the vendors that you just mentioned. They plugged it all in and they still got hit. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
I'd love to tell them there's a great reason, and this is why. But at the end of the day, security is one of those things where it will continue to always evolve, and we're always behind, unfortunately. New attacks come. Again, I think we've talked about it just a little. I think the biggest piece that I can take away is, hey, look, when the shit hits the fan, how quick can I evolve? How quick can I come back from it? Right?
Sure.
There's no technology in the security realm that can say they're perfect. Not yet. But if you can minimize that time of something getting inside the mailbox and removing it as quick as possible is very, very important. And that's in any technology, regardless of where it is or where it sits. I know we're talking about email today, but when you look at this work from home environment and everything that entails, it's not just the email aspect of things that are a challenge to it. So what I would tell them is, let's take a look at to really see and understand what happened. Did someone click something they weren't supposed to? Did our systems or did the technology not pick up on what was really going on? Is there multiple layer of approaches that could have been different? Some things that we do see that is a big, big challenge is I send you maybe an attachment. Inside the attachment is a link to a good spot. Let's say it's a Dropbox that is good or secure. And from there, so it's like the 3rd tier down, something's bad or malicious, right? Most systems today have a challenge with that deeper underneath the covers layer that you can't even get at first. So we've seen that every now and then where you get an attachment, there's nothing wrong with it. Inside the attachment, there's a link that goes to a very good site, let's say Dropbox, and then we don't have visibility, or the technology that you have from a security perspective doesn't have visibility into that system, and there's a challenge.
I see. So that's the Achilles heel for a lot of people, it sounds like.
Like
the 3rd layer, 4th layer down.
It could be. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know of a technology that handles something that's deep. And we've got some technology that we even leverage that's 2 layers deep, but beyond that it becomes a big issue.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So for the people who, you still think, or you would still recommend that the on-prem mail server is less secure no matter what you do than the hosted online one? Like if like the on-prem Exchange versus Office 365, like is there even a conversation there?
No, I mean, some of the financial institutions and healthcare still have Microsoft Exchange, and they still very, very comfortable with it. And over a period of time, I think it's just a matter of time before Microsoft forces them to move in some form or fashion, probably with dollars and support is what I would see. We're not there yet, but you have seen little waves of saying we're not supporting this version any longer, right? And that'll continue down the stretch. But there are some businesses and organizations that will stay Microsoft Exchange and on-prem. Now, we're starting to see that shift, right, into saying, okay, I feel comfortable and confident. They've given me additional assurances in the security realm, typically, to say my data is safe, secure, and then I'm going to make that change over, an 18-month or 24-month period.
Fair.
So maybe
Okay.
have a longer stretch to go.
All right. So big picture. So
Yep.
what I take away from all of this so far is it's not perfect.
Yep.
No matter what you do, it's not perfect, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's knowledge to be learned, but maybe you're not necessarily having to have everybody become a CISO within your organization, right?
Right.
3 is automation. I know a lot of people use that word, and sometimes and it's very thin, by the way, sometimes. But that's obviously there's no way unless you're going to add massive staff, which then becomes unprofitable. You just can't keep up with it. And number 4 is like there's a constant learning approach to this, right? Like how much data is out there that you should, where should these MSPs be looking to try and keep up with, hey, this is now new, or hey, this is something that we should think about, or this is the new thing that's happening that wasn't happening before. Like, is there any one feed of information over another that you would suggest them to latch onto, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And again, our view is a little bit different, where people always thought the human element was the weakest one. And we view it as it could be the strongest one within the organization if you enable it. So having I didn't even use buzzwords like ML and AI yet, but having a system that not only has the human element along with machine and technology to help is by far the best way to go about it, because they could be our biggest ally in the fight against phishing and phishing attacks, right? We kind of view it as, if you look at it from the Waze app, and I think most everyone is familiar with Waze and what it does. The two benefits that most of the people you talk to is, I want the fastest way to get home or to get wherever I'm going, and I also want to know where the latest accident is or where the police car is.
That's mine.
Is that you? Yeah. Yeah. And so when you take that in, and that's given to you in real time, right? If it told you where the police officer was yesterday, it wouldn't help you, right? So that's where, our AI, machine learning, and that automated approach comes into play. If I have George who has been educated and thinks something's bad or malicious, and he lands inside the mailbox and he reports it, the best thing is our entire community worldwide knows about that email now and can take action on it right away.
It's like crowd intelligence.
Crowd sharing, exactly. Crowd sharing for phishing attacks is one of the biggest takeaways that we've seen, been most beneficial to all our customers globally and worldwide. And all that is done in real time. And that's, different than what Microsoft has. Sometimes Microsoft will wait, 24, 48 hours until more companies, have a phishing attack. And it's very, very similar for us. If we know about it, all our customers know in real time.
Fair enough. Last, thoughts of the road, if you would, right? If you were to tell MSPs, here's my best advice to get through the end of this year, going into hopefully 2021, which should be, I don't know, less gloomy, for everybody, right? Not just technology,
for everybody,
like mentally, right? Let's get out in the sun a little bit. What would you? What's your top, advice points on the way, on the way out of 2020 here?
Yeah, it's been a crazy year in all aspects, right? When you look at how we started this year, the paradigm shift has changed from I'm doing my normal day-to-day, and then when everyone started work from home, that brought separate challenges, right? So projects got put on hold or cost because people had to understand, did George have a laptop? Could he get access to data? Did he have everything he needed to work from home? When he's working from home, is his network secure, right? All those challenges have happened, right? If people don't have it figured out now, they're in trouble, right? And I think
I was telling our mutual buddy Ken Patterson, there's still a lot of duct tape, Band-Aid, and bubble gum out there.
There's stuff out there, but I think for the remainder of 2020, I think we are where we are, right? We might get to hopefully some signs of maybe people going back to the office. It really depends on, let's see what the fall takes place, and there's a wait and see attitude. That being said, the projects that were put on hold, maybe they're not put on hold any longer, right? So when you look at your business as an MSP, is revisit the projects that you were talking about. Obviously have that conversation regarding security. Again, whether it's my technology or not, have that conversation, because these things are going to continue to happen because of the success rate. And email particularly, because everyone's working from home, that communication process has been elevated significantly, right? And so emails, of the 700% more emails that are now being transponded, it's just opening up the bigger vector. And even if it's not just email, you've got to look at Teams and Slack and some other messaging systems of how do you look at that from organizations on how they communicate, and is that data secure? So I would say approach the subject from an MSP perspective of ask about the projects that maybe have been delayed. Are they on tap? And the second piece is ask the security questions of, hey, look, it looks like we're going to be in this a little bit longer than we all imagine. It kind of sucks. That being said, is let's make sure we're looking at your security posture. And that could be, like I said, a VPN. It could be a firewall that might need to be installed. It could be endpoint protection, or it could be
probably not a copier.
I don't think a lot of people are calling it. Yeah.
Fair enough. So, hey, football starting tonight. Where you put all your rooting in here?
So you're going to hate it, George, because I hate my answer. I grew up in Cincinnati. I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan. And I'm the only one in Atlanta, Georgia that I think is a Bengals fan. So I never get in fights about pro football these days, clearly because no one cares about the Bengals. I'm sorry to say, but I'm a fan. I'm a fan. That being said, I think the Kansas City Chiefs look tough. They're fast. Speed kills in most sports, and they've got a lot of speed on there.
Well, what do you think about Tom Brady versus, somebody put out online, who has a harder job, Tom Brady or Cam Newton now?
I think Cam Newton.
Okay.
Winning it becomes a custom with the Patriots, right? Once you don't have they're so used to making the playoffs, winning Super Bowls.
Their expectations are low right now, right? Like Tom Brady.
Think so?
Team.
Talk to our friend Ken Patterson. Tell me if his expectations of the Pats are low.
No, I know.
No chance. I mean, Tom Brady. The Bucs haven't been that good. They got the biggest buzz. I heard in Vegas, most people are picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, but most bets are on how many wins Tampa Bay gets.
Interesting. Okay, so you're gonna watch tonight. You gotta pick. I'm gonna
take the Chiefs.
Okay.
Who's your pick? Who's your pick?
I'm gonna go with Andy Reid as a Philadelphia fan. We got to support Big Red. It's more about him than it is Mahomes. That's fine. And then my team. I need to get back on the horse here, right? I hope Carson Wentz stays healthy. That's my.
What's your over under on number of wins for Philadelphia this year?
I got 11 wins.
Wow, you threw yourself out there, big man.
I got 11 wins, and I call another division win over the Dallas Cowboys. And even though there's more teams that get in the playoffs, we'll see. Well, they'll get in the playoffs, but I need another back-to-back.
11 wins, man. That's big. That's bold.
Hey, we have 3 out of the 4 teams in the NFC East. 3 have new coaches.
That's true. I mean, it depends if Winston
no training camp, no mini camp. No, just saying.
I like it. If I did the over/under on the Bengals, what do you think? New quarterback, Joe Burrow. They were miserable last year.
I give you 7 wins.
Oh boy, I'll take the under.
That's my prognostication. Now you'll circle back at the end of the season and be like, how did that guy know? I don't know. You'll see. Hey, listen, the first season they don't have a book on you, right? You never know what you're gonna get. That's how you get to get to 7.
I like it. If the Bengals get 7 wins, that's a lot year over year, and I think it'd be a good recipe for the next year.
Yeah, I think you got a shot to new coach, new quarterback. You got a good shot. But anyway, man, I really appreciate you coming on board. Thank you
so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, your view of the world, everyone. MSP Initiatives, Mondays. Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time, and keep in touch because we may have you back, Adam, and we'll maybe try and pull together a couple panels now and maybe zoom out on the security topic and get a couple opinions into the mix, huh?
Sounds great, George. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody. Any questions, concerns? Obviously, you know how to get me, and I'm happy to be on any panel. You just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, everybody.